Last week in San Francisco, at Fort Mason, some of the representatives of the world's leading cities, from Barcelona to Paris to London to Boston, got together to talk about smart cities. The impresario behind this remarkable event was a remarkable gentleman, one of my best friends, Peter Hirshberg, very well known in Silicon Valley, formerly marketing director at Apple many years ago, the chairman of Technorati and many other things, now becoming one of the world's leading authorities on smart cities. Peter, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
It's fun to be here.
Peter, tell me why TechCrunch viewers should care about smart cities.
You know, the whole web world is so accessible because of APIs and openness. You can start in and you can make something happen. And we often think of cities as it's cities' job, and yet cities are opening up. They're opening up data. The whole data layer and the ability to use sensors can make cities better. And so all sorts of startups, I think, can do more to make cities better than even what cities can do top-down themselves. There's an enormous dialogue and a lot of innovation that's going to come there, and that's what this whole week was about.
So you brought all these people from all these big cities around the world. Why did they come to San Francisco? Were they meeting with startups? Were they sitting in the creamery trying to engage with entrepreneurs?
There's an organization we work with called Living Labs Global that essentially matches cities with startups to do innovation. And here's the essential problem. Cities are actually a lousy customer, you would think, for startups because they have difficult purchasing and they take forever. If you can break that, if you can make it easier for innovative companies to work with this kind of difficult enterprise customer, you can get in faster innovation. So that's what this organization did. 100 or 25 cities issued challenges. They're like, here are problems we can't solve, and they threw them to 100 companies. This week, the winners were announced, and the companies in the cities got together, and basically these new innovative solutions are going to be adopted and scaled by cities.
So this was like a giant city hackathon, smart city hackathon?
Think of it as almost like a developers conference where the developers and the cities got together. They weren't hacking there, they were bringing solutions that they've been working on for a year. I'll give you an example. A year ago, San Francisco issued a challenge. We had two failed attempts to do LED lighting in San Francisco. And as San Francisco was thinking about it, they realized that...
Sorry, what does that mean, LED lighting?
Replace the street lights with LEDs to save energy. But when you replace the street lights with LEDs, you're actually think of all the tens of thousands of street lights. Each of those points could be an access point for wireless services, for security services. So San Francisco said, can we put some open source system in all these thousands of points that not only controls the lights, but can be a really smart control pad for urban services? And the winning company was a company called Paradox Engineering, won, and this year they implemented a pilot, and now San Francisco is looking at having thousands of points with an open source platform that the city can write to, that other people can write to. Maybe they're doing meter reading, security, municipal Wi-Fi, maybe art. But the idea is that a street light, which sounds like just a dumb street light, could become a platform for urban services. That was one of them. I'm
guessing that traffic issues are central to this, to what you're doing.
Yeah, and you know what I find interesting about traffic is so often when we think about traffic, you think about major things like having to put in more subways or buses. But it turns out that additional information on the margin can make an enormous difference. We had a panel yesterday, and Sunil Paul was on the panel, who's the founder of Sidecar, which like Lyft. Okay, so these are all collaborative consumption sharing economy services.
Collaborative driving.
Yeah. Sharing your car, Uber sharing. Those sets of services, I think, can do more to make a smart city faster than a transportation process that might take, billions of dollars in several years. And this is an enormous challenge for cities. San Francisco has to balance the taxi drivers and safety and the normal ways of doing things with the fact that these new services can open up so much capability. I did a project in Singapore last year where we got Singtel, the phone company, the taxi company, and the parking people to open 2 million records each of data. And we were able to very quickly see that 15% of all car rides or taxi rides duplicated each other. And if you had a sharing service, you could remarkably reduce things. There was another startup that joined us yesterday. Barney Pell has a startup called QuickPay. It looks at parking. And it turns out if you take all sorts of disparate parking things and you make it easier for people to find parking, or you add new business rules so that if you work at a company, it's automatic how you get in and out, you can vastly improve capabilities in a city. Cities won't do this. This is outside innovation coming in, and it's essentially using all those efficiencies you find in big data to vastly improve a project.
Is there a lot of money here? Should entrepreneurs be licking their lips?
I think a lot of the money comes from how you build a service that you, in a way, can sell to a private sector not just to a city. So this is one of the interesting things here. When you think of smart cities, you think, well, cities are big and they're rich. So much of cities' monies are committed. There's a startup in San Francisco that I'm very impressed with that was also on our panel yesterday called Motion Loft. What they do is they put sensors up, and it'll tell a retailer how many people are passing in front of the store. So this is instrumenting in the physical world what we do on the internet all the time. How many visitors do I have? Do they dwell? Do they bounce off my shopping cart? Well, if you can tell a retailer when people are walking by and you sell that information back to them, you'll get a 10% lift because suddenly you can keep the store open when the people are coming by. He's now deployed a sensor network throughout San Francisco that serves real estate and retail, private. But now that he has that, he's adding things like air quality and radiation. So a sensor private network's being built to serve private interests that'll have a big civic payback. So I think a lot of this are entrepreneurs finding ways to build businesses that serve a city and serve perhaps the private sector and then back into the public sector.
Peter, as an authority on smart cities, you're spending a lot of time with both city people themselves and also entrepreneurs. Where do we still need innovation? What's missing? What could an entrepreneur out there who really likes this space, what could they focus on? Problems which no one's solving at the moment.
Well, we're in many ways at the very beginning of this. And one place to look is cities open up lots and lots of data. And all of that open data is kind of a resource. There's crime data, there's transportation data, health data. So kind of all of those sectors can start using that stuff. And there's real interest in cities around the world to use things like predictive analytics to improve things, so predictive policing and predictive traffic work.
But wouldn't a big data company like Google lick their lips and say, well, we can own this space, or does it require new startups?
There's an awful lot of innovation that's needed here. The big vendors like IBM and Siemens tend to go for really, really big projects. And I think a lot of innovation happens on the edges. As I described with Motion Loft or the work that Barney Pell's doing in parking, these tend to be smaller point solutions where you can really go figure out and solve a problem intimately with a customer and then scale it. And that generally happens, without having to have an enormous contract with the city. Google's an interesting case because Google.org really wants to go build products for cities, and they have done a good job of, for example, getting cities to issue transit data in a normalized way. That's why when you go on Google, you can find out when all the subways and buses are coming and how they work together. So they're a big force there.
Well, Peter, I can't let you get away, Mr. Smart City, without talking about the dark side. I'm not sure I want to be in cities in 10 years because they're going to know everything I do. They're even going to predict what I'm going to do. Is it scary?
I think everything we're scared about big data and the internet happens in cities, but arguably more so because it's where we live our lives.
So it's bad news overall.
It's you know what it is? We have to make smart architectural decisions and implement this stuff willfully, right?
Smart architectural decisions,
so look,
meaning?
For example, we like the fact that the internet is open and things can be shared. In China and in Russia right now, they want to clamp things down. It's not an accident that we have a more open internet, but that takes work in creating it that way. In the case of cities, there's enormous value if you have collective information. So if we kind of know where all these people are running around and we can predict traffic, that's great. On the other hand, if we can go watch what Andrew does all day, that's not so great. So this requires us to build systems that have the right level of anonymization and the right level of security. There's a game coming out next year, the computer game that's all based on the dark side of smart cities. I think it's an Ubisoft game. Jay Nath, who's the Chief Innovation Officer of San Francisco, sent me a link. And we all looked at it and we said, it really shows that this stuff is becoming culturally important and something the society cares about when a great piece of entertainment starts questioning it. Not unlike Metropolis 100 years ago, that great dystopian film about cities 100 years ago questioned it. So the dark side of this is, look, every part of our city can be controlled. A black hat could control lighting or take out parts of the city, and yet it gives us enormous efficiency and also a lot more engagement. The other point about this that I think is really good is people often relate to cities like, you can't fight City Hall, it's a pain in the ass, I got to pay my taxes. As cities open up data and you can start developing for them, or we run hackathons and people build things, how cool is it that ordinary citizens feel like they can contribute? I think being a citizen in the digital age means being a maker, not just complaining about a city, but writing it to its API. In the 60s, we protested. Today, we can write to an API and make a city better.
Perfect conclusion. In the 60s, we protested. Today we make APIs to make our world better. Peter, as an investor and a partner to startups, how do people contact you?
You can reach me at peter@hirshberg.com, and on the internet, it's the Reimagine Group.
Peter, Mr. Smart Cities Hirshberg, pleasure, honor to have you on TechCrunch TV, and I look forward to having you again on the show very soon.